My name is Silvia Steininger. Together with my colleague Tom Sparks, we were delighted to create the following video for the American Journal of International Law. It focuses on Silvia Getti's 1927 article, The Effect of Changes on Sovereignty on Nationality, the first article published by women in the American Journal of International Law. It is the summary of our discussion of this article in our monthly discussion group on legal theory at the Max Planck Institute for Comparative Public Law and International Law in Heidelberg that Tom and I co-host. This particular session on canon, archive, and gender international law had been graciously hosted by the late Karen Knopp. Karen was a brilliant academic whose research we had greatly admired. We were delighted that she accepted our invitation to host this discussion in our group only a few months before her untimely death. By recording this video, we hope to give testament to Karen's vision, brilliance, and steadfast commitment to emerging scholars, as well as women in the legal academy and international legal theory.
I have read the article, The Effect of Change of Sovereignty on Nationality by Lula Gettis. It was published in AJIL volume 21 back in 1927.
What we can see in this article is that first and foremost, the contribution to international law doctrine on an issue which was of particular relevance at the beginning of the 20th century, namely the question of the legal question of how to determine nationality of a person in case there was either state succession or that there were changes in the territory of a particular state.
Getti's article can be looked at in a number of different ways as a first. The most obvious, of course, is that it was published by a woman for the first time in the American Journal of International Law. But I think that's only one part of the story. One could also look at Getti's article as one of those first articles which sort of identifies a serious gap in the international legal architecture of sovereignty and its effects on nationality.
And Getti's identified a legal gap insofar as there was by then no customary international law, no international multilateral or no legal instrument really at the general international level addressing this question.
The article sheds light on the consequences that gaps in international law, in this case state succession and nationality law, have on individuals. She brings attention to particularly vulnerable individuals, such as women and children. I would say that this approach seems a proto-feminist approach, in that it shows how, far from being neutral, international norms and institutions, as well as state practice, affect particularly women.
So why with first is a very interesting question, because basically it's on the one hand soul searching. So where do we come from? It's a very classical question, I think, that we have as a discipline.
But I think it is important to look at firsts as monuments of contingency.
But on the other hand, I think firsts are also showing us the historical contingency of how knowledge is constructed.
I think it is important to look more at what is between the lines rather than what Getti actually writes, because it is a way of reading back into the past that allows us to look for the nuances and the shadows more than what it is brought into light.
Archives also have always been a tremendous source of political power and of recognition and consequently also of disenfranchisement. And I think today, more than ever, I think archives are being referred to both by conservatives and progressive forces. So in the battle of legitimacy, revisiting archives, I believe, is crucially important.
I think the canon has a disciplining function for us as scholars. So what we put in the canon, what we put in our syllabus, what we put into what are the must-reads of international law disciplines us. It disciplines our knowledge, it disciplines the arguments, it disciplines the language and the concepts that we think are considerable or acceptable in international legal arguments. So I think the canon always includes and excludes certain voices. This is why I think the canon and the construction and reconstruction of a canon is a strategic action we do as scholars.
So I think going back to the archive helps us, and reading again this article today helps us take back agency and insert new voices in the canon. And the only way of doing it is by actually and actively adding new voices into it. Because canons and archives are not automatic devices. So we play a big role and part into that.
So to me, this is a one example where the forward-looking approach in normative terms can somehow get ahead of the trends that will later emerge. And this, again, shows the durability of such an article at the American Journal of International Law.